Diane Abbott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Home Secretary for his account of events. On this side of the House, we're glad that Julian Assange will be able to access medical care, treatment and facilities, because there have been worrying reports about his ill health. Of course, at this point, this is all a matter for the courts. But on this side of the House, we want to make the point that the reason we are debating Julian Assange this afternoon, even though the only charge he may face in this country is in relation to his bail hearings, the reason we are debating this afternoon is entirely to do with the whistleblowing activities of Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. It is this whistleblowing activity into illegal wars, mass murder, murder of civilians and corruption on a grand scale that has put Julian Assange in the crosshairs of the US administration. It is for this reason that they have once more issued an extradition warrant against Mr. Assange. The Home Secretary will note that Mr. Assange complained to the UN that he was being unlawfully detained as he could not leave the Ecuadorian embassy without being arrested. And in February 2016, the UN panel ruled in his favour, stating that he had been arbitrarily detained and should be allowed to walk free and compensated for his deprivation of liberty. Mr. Assange hailed that as a significant victory, called the decision binding, but the Foreign Office responded by saying this ruling changes nothing. I note it was the Foreign Office that responded, not the Home Office or the Ministry of Justice. The Foreign Office has no responsibility for imprisonment and extradition in this country, but it is, of course, interested in relations with allies and others. We have precedent in this country in relation to requests for extradition to the US when the US authorities raise issues of hacking and national security. I would remind the House of the case of Gary McKinnon. In October 2012, when the current Prime Minister was Home Secretary, an extradition request very similar to this one was refused. And we should recall what WikiLeaks actually disclosed. Who can forget the Pentagon video footage of a missile attack in 2007 in Iraq, which killed 18 civilians and 2 Reuters journalists? It is the monumental amount of leaks such as this that lifted the veil on US-led military operation in a variety of theatres, none of which have produced a favourable outcome from the people of those countries. Julian Assange is not being pursued to protect US national security. He is being pursued because he has exposed wrongdoing by US administrations and their military forces. And we only have to look at the treatment of Chelsea Manning to see what awaits him if he's extradited to the US. Ms Manning has already been incarcerated between 2010 to 2017. She was originally sentenced to 35 years. Her indefinite detention now is because she refuses to participate in partial disclosure, which would allow whistleblowers to be pursued, not the perpetrators. And her human rights and protections as a transgender woman have been completely ignored. Her human rights as a transgender woman have been completely ignored, and I would hope members on the other side of the House would take that seriously. And what it has to do with Julian Assange's case is this could be the type of treatment that he could expect if he's extradited to the US. In this country, we have protections for whistleblowers, including the Public Interest Disclosure Act 1998 and others, even if some of us feel these protections should be more robust. Underpinning this legislation is the correct premise, not that anyone can leak anything they like, but there should be protection afforded to those who take personal risk to disclose wrongdoing where that disclosure serves the public interest. Julian Assange is at risk of extradition to the US precisely because on this side of the House we believe he has disclosed material that is in the utmost public interest. This is now in the hands of the British law courts. We have the utmost confidence in the British legal system, but we would say on this side of the House, we would be very concerned that on the basis of what we know, Julian Assange was extradited to the US.